Marvel's modern age introduced countless new heroes, villains, and anti-heroes meant to shape the future of the universe. Some arrived with major storylines, powerful abilities, and huge promotional pushes that made them seem impossible to ignore. But as the years passed, many quietly disappeared from the spotlight. Some were overshadowed by bigger names, others abandoned by changing creative directions, and a few simply stopped appearing without explanation. They weren't forgotten because they lacked potential. They were left behind as Marvel moved on. But which modern-age characters faded the fastest? Here are 10 modern-age characters Marvel wants you to forget. At number 10 is Adam X, the X-Treme. Debuting in a 1993 annual at the apex of the 90s comic boom, Adam X was quietly positioned for a massive legacy reveal. Clad in shoulder pads and blades, writer Fabian Nicieza intended him to be the mysterious Third Summer's brother, a bombshell meant to anchor the mutant line. But the execution fell completely flat. Fans found his aggressively dated edgelord aesthetic and convoluted power, igniting blood electrolytes only after cutting foes. Hilarious rather than intimidating. When Nicieza left the core titles, the grand plan wasn't abruptly scrapped. It was just left dangling as an unresolved mystery for over a decade. Rather than formally concluding his story, Marvel simply moved on, sidestepping Adam X entirely to introduce Vulcan as the definitive Third Summer's brother in 2006. Trapped in permanent narrative limbo with his parentage never fully addressed on the page, Adam X is now relegated to being a mere punchline in background panels, an embarrassing relic of 90s excess. At number 9 is teen Tony Stark. In 1995, hoping to revitalize a stagnant comic line, Marvel orchestrated The Crossing, a universally panned crossover that inexplicably revealed the original Tony Stark as a long-term sleeper agent for Kang the Conqueror. To replace him, editorial thrust a 19-year-old alternate timeline Tony into the flagship Iron Man title, equipping him with fresh armor and pushing him as the youthful modern face of the Avengers. Readers despised this desperate pivot, feeling deeply alienated by the veteran hero's character assassination, while simultaneously loathing his younger counterpart's insufferable angst and poorly penned dialogue. As sales rapidly cratered, the publisher panicked over breaking a founding icon. They hastily engineered the teen's sacrifice during the Onslaught crisis, merging him with his older self. Following the Heroes Reborn reboot, a traditional adult Tony returned with the full, guilt-ridden memories of his younger counterpart's actions, leaving the teenager physically buried but haunting continuity. At number 8 is Ulysses Cain. Launched in 2016 as the cornerstone of Civil War II, Ulysses Cain was positioned as a monumental addition to the publishing slate. Designed to replicate the financial triumph of its predecessor, this precognitive inhuman was prominently marketed as the catalyst who would shatter the ideological bonds between Captain Marvel and Iron Man. The problem? The fan base instantly saw through it and rejected him. Instead of a compelling protagonist, audiences saw a hollow narrative tool lacking agency, distinct personality, or genuine internal conflict. The overarching storyline felt remarkably contrived, forcing established champions to act irrationally merely to serve his prophetic visions. Recognizing this colossal misstep by the grand climax, writers devised an abrupt, literal deus ex machina to resolve the problem. The abstract entity Eternity suddenly materialized, announced that the clairvoyant had evolved beyond mortal comprehension, and whisked him into the stars. Since that sudden departure, he has vanished entirely, permanently excised from current lore. But if you think forcing a cosmic prophecy was Marvel's worst pivot, wait until you see the corporate mandates coming up. We're about to look at a failed street-level Peter Parker clone, an inhuman PR disaster, and an alien berserker who was quite literally obliterated by her own creators. At number 7 is Gravity, or Greg Willis. Introduced in 2005, Marvel meticulously engineered Greg Willis to be their next definitive street-level sensation. Headlining a heavily promoted solo run penned by Sean McKeever, this college-age newcomer was aggressively advertised as a modern equivalent to a young Peter Parker. The publisher even granted him a prestigious role in the Beyond miniseries to solidify his standing alongside established heavyweights. Yet, the readership easily spotted the artificiality of this endeavor. Equipped with a fairly standard power set and built upon a predictable checklist of everyday guy tropes, Gravity struggled to find footing in a crowded landscape already fully populated with iconic teen vigilantes. To force him into legendary status, writers gave him a fake heroic death. followed immediately by a swift resurrection designed to drum up excitement. When this transparent stunt also yielded lackluster results, the company finally conceded defeat, banishing the once promising vigilante into silent cameos. At number 6 is Mosaic, or Morris Sackett. Amidst a sweeping 2016 corporate mandate to supplant the mutant population with Inhumans due to cinematic licensing disputes with Fox, Morris Sackett was unveiled as the edgy vanguard of this controversial initiative. Initially appearing in Uncanny Inhumans number 11, this former professional basketball star gained the terrifying ability to hijack other bodies, immediately earning his own high-profile ongoing title. Unfortunately, the timing proved disastrous. The community was already actively boycotting the broader push, fiercely resenting the perceived disrespect toward their favorite outcasts. To make matters worse, they intentionally wrote the protagonist as an insufferable narcissist, alienating anyone who might have otherwise given the narrative a chance. Consequently, sales tanked immediately, forcing a swift cancellation by the 8th installment. Once Disney formally acquired rival studios, returning beloved properties homeward, the entire developmental strategy dissolved instantly. The disgraced athlete sank alongside the discarded initiative, comprehensively scrubbed from existence mere months after his debut. At number 5 is Deathcry. By 1993, Earth's mightiest heroes were losing significant ground to the gritty and violent mutant titles dominating comic shop shelves. Desperate to recapture market dominance, executives mandated the creation of a deeply aggressive alien warrior designed specifically to inject immediate attitude into the classic roster. Bursting into Avengers issue 363 with razor-sharp claws and wild avian hair, Deathcry was blatantly positioned as the squad's own feral berserker. Instead of looking cool, this forced attempt at extreme 90s edge completely clashed with the team's traditional dynamic. Longtime loyalists despised her forced ferocity, while mutant enthusiasts completely ignored the transparent imitation. She generated zero reader empathy and quickly became an annoying distraction. Scribes eventually exiled the fighter back to her home galaxy, pretending the stint never occurred. Years later, creators delivered the ultimate insult during Annihilation: Conquest, reviving the forgotten combatant purely to have her violently obliterated mid-battle, and when they brought her back a second time in the Chaos War miniseries, she was sacrificed again just to seal a dimensional breach. At number 4 is Alpha, or Andrew Maguire. For the 50th anniversary celebration in 2012, executives orchestrated a massive promotional campaign surrounding Andrew Maguire. Granted phenomenal abilities following a laboratory mishap directly caused by Peter Parker, this newly christened sidekick was supposed to represent a monumental status quo shift. To highlight the veteran hero and his inherent nobility, author Dan Slott crafted the teenager as exceedingly selfish and wildly irresponsible. Unfortunately, the stunt blew up in their faces. The fandom deemed the youth utterly intolerable, drowning out the festive milestone with fierce complaints regarding his terrible attitude. Responding to overwhelming negativity, creators quickly pivoted, having a regretful Parker invent a specialized device to siphon away all of his godlike energy shortly after his grand debut. Although a subsequent limited series tried salvaging the concept, abysmal purchasing metrics ensured this failed protege remained permanently exiled from official canon. We're entering the top 3, and this is where the hype machines completely derail into legendary industry failures. We're talking a blatant 90s comic ripoff, a Stan Lee creation turned into a space statue, and an audacious retcon that Marvel immediately tried to bury. At number 3 is Nightwatch. Debuting in 1993, Kevin Trench was aggressively pushed as a brooding, cape-draped vigilante named Nightwatch. Marvel bestowed him with an ongoing solo series and a prominent role during the sprawling Maximum Carnage crossover, desperately hoping to capitalize on the era's booming appetite for dark, heavily armored anti-heroes. The problem? Readers instantly recognized the glaring visual and thematic similarities to Image Comics' wildly successful Spawn. Lacking any unique narrative identity beneath his self-repairing nanotech suit, this blatant imitation completely failed to resonate with the core audience, prompting a swift cancellation. Rather than allowing a dignified exit, subsequent writers actively dismantled his legacy. A devastating later appearance in She-Hulk shockingly revealed that Trench had secretly become a supervillain known as Night Eater. To protect his reputation, he orchestrated a massive magic spell to erase everyone's memory of his crimes, forcing the world to only remember his heroic days. This ruthless twist purposefully shattered his remaining dignity, cementing the derivative fighter as a disgraced, forgotten relic of 90s excess rather than a lasting industry icon. At number 2 is Ravage 2099, or Paul Philip Ravage. When launching the futuristic imprint in 1992, the publisher needed prestige to anchor their bold new universe. To legitimize this ambitious endeavor, Stan Lee himself returned to script the adventures of Paul Philip Ravage, a corporate CEO turned vigilante. Backed by premium foil covers and the iconic creator's seal of approval, this entirely original champion was fully expected to lead the charge. That momentum died the second Lee abandoned the book after just 8 issues, leaving the ongoing narrative completely unmoored. Desperate subsequent writers subjected the protagonist to radical mutations, transforming him from a suave executive into a grotesque, horned beast. These jarring tonal shifts gave audiences severe whiplash, causing monthly circulation to plummet as buyers flocked to better alternatives. To conclude his escalating misery, Dr. Doom coated Ravage in liquid adamantium, freezing him into a permanent statue, and launched his entire mutant-populated island into deep space. At number 1 is Voyager, or Valerie Vector, to promote the monumental 2017 weekly saga Avengers. No surrender, the publishing house executed a highly ambitious marketing campaign by digitally inserting a mysterious figure into iconic 1960s cover art. Valerie Vector was aggressively pitched as a forgotten founding member whose existence had been mysteriously wiped from universal memory, an audacious retcon intended to establish a brand new cosmic heavyweight within permanent canon. The twist was great, but once the mystery was solved, she had absolutely zero personality left to keep readers hooked. Midway through the epic, the narrative unveiled her as the Grandmaster's deceptive daughter, manipulating reality to win an elaborate celestial wager. Following her inevitable redemption arc, audiences quickly realized she possessed zero compelling personality traits beyond that initial deception. Although she briefly served as a convenient dimensional guide in a subsequent related storyline, she promptly vanished upon its conclusion, quietly drifting away into absolute obscurity before her forced presence could further damage the established mythology. These modern-age characters deserved lasting success. Comment your biggest missed opportunity, subscribe now, and turn on notifications for more Marvel deep dives.